Hi everybody, Paul from VIEZU and Paramount Performance, and it's time for our next Jaguar XF video. So if you've been following any of our recent videos on this particular car, we've taken a car that was a little bit tired, needed a little bit of work, we've done a bit of restoration work on it, and now we've started a journey of modification. So far we've fitted a brand new switchable exhaust system, a pair of 200 cell catalytic converters, and in our last video we remapped the vehicle to show what a stage 1 tuning file can do. And today we're going to take the stage tuning a little bit further, moving into supercharger pulleys and what's commonly known as stage 2 tuning. So we're going to follow the process today. We're going to start with a dyno, as we always do. So we're going to dyno the car as she is now with all the current modifications. The boys are then going to fit an upper, smaller supercharger pulley, and we'll re-dyno it and see the difference. As part of that work, we will also tweak the map a little bit to allow for the additional airflow that the supercharger pulley is going to be causing. So we're going to crack on now with a dyno, but just before we do that, as always in these videos, we do like to take a couple of questions, and we've got a few that I would like to cover now before we crack on with the work. So this is the supercharger pulley that we're going to be fitting today. This is a stock pulley, and if you see them together, you can see we are a little bit smaller. In fact, we are 6% smaller than the standard pulley, and that's where we're going to be getting our power from. A little bit like changing gears on a push bike. If you put a smaller pulley, what the equivalent would be on the wheel will spin faster by charging it up from the crank. So that's why we go smaller on the top and larger when we do the lower pulleys. Okay, so one of the most common questions we get when changing supercharger pulleys is, should I change the upper pulley or should I change the lower one? And I guess really it depends. I mean, my perfect answer of course is you probably change both, but let's just slow this down a little bit and look at the options here. On the V8 engine, if you're only going to do one pulley, I always suggest you do the upper pulley. It's quicker, it's cheaper to change, and it runs on the standard belt too. But on the V6, that's not the case. On the V6 engine from Jaguar Land Rover, the upper pulley is already smaller from the factory. So by changing it, you can still get small gains, and you can actually fit a slightly smaller pulley still, but a lot of the fun has been had already. So I recommend on the V6 engine, change the lower crank pulley if you're only doing one. That will get you your biggest power for the change, and on the V8 do the upper pulley first, and then if you want to go to stage 3, go on to do the lower crank pulley. So that's my recommendation on which order to do them on, and it does depend on which engine you're actually running in your car. The second question we get quite often when changing supercharger pulleys is, should I change the air filters too? Will it make any more difference, or should I fit an air induction kit? And normally if people say to me, look, I'm thinking about putting in a couple of panel filters in my car, yes, it might make a small difference, but it's very, very small. So small, in fact, if you dynoed a car and you've only changed the panel filters, you probably wouldn't see the difference on a dyno, 1 or 2 brake horsepower. But when you're changing the supercharger pulley, you're actually trying to draw in more air from the standard system is used to providing. So having a big fat factory air filter actually is a bit of a limiting factor here. So at the very least, if you're going to fit a pulley, always fit a good pair of panel air filters, or better still, a nice quality cold air induction system. So it means when you're spinning the supercharger up quicker, you're allowed to draw more and more air in quicker, and you haven't got that factory restriction from the air filters. And one more question we commonly get about supercharger pulleys is, should I remap the car at the same time? And the answer to this almost has to be yes. The pulley itself, if you just do the upper pulley, will make a nice improvement, but we are probably talking about 22 brake horsepower. Where it really comes alive is where you add a map to it at the same time, and power gains then 50, 60, even more brake horsepower just from doing one upper pulley, but it does need the remap to go with it. And a little word of caution if you don't mind, if you are changing the upper pulley and the lower pulley on either the V6 or the V8, you absolutely must remap the engine. By changing both pulleys, the air pull-in now is so great that the ECU in its standard format cannot adapt for it, and there's a risk you end up running lean. So you've got all this air coming in, but the ECU literally can't give it enough fuel without a remap. The engine runs lean, and that can be very, very serious. These big old V8s do not like to run lean. They get very hot very quickly. They don't like to run in those conditions, and you can quickly lead into actual engine failure. So little word of caution, as I say, do always remap if you're changing both pulleys. You don't have to remap if you're only changing one, but the power gains will be quite limited if you don't. So that's enough questions for now. Andy is stood by my side here ready to crack on and get this supercharger pulley fitted, but we will start with the dyno first. So let's see how she runs. Okay, so very similar to the last time we ran this car with the Stage 1 software. She's currently running 598 brake horsepower, which is exactly where we expect it to be. So I'm going to pass this over to Andy, we're going to get this fitted and we're going to see what difference this makes. Okay, so Andy's getting nice and busy cracking on with the supercharger job. People do often ask, is this a job I can fit myself? And my personal opinion really is the upper supercharger pulley is probably not a DIY job. Getting the old one off actually isn't the end of the world. You do need quite a serious supercharger pulley like this one. Common in the industry, you'll see what I call a banana leg puller, which is like a crane puller. That sort of puller is not going to do this job. You need quite a serious bit of kit that actually clamps around the pulley and can apply an awful lot of pressure. These pulleys are heat shrunk on, so they're put on very hot. Then as they cool, they literally bind onto the supercharger shaft, and they're not the easiest things to remove. And when you fit them, the process is reversed. So we're going to heat this supercharger pulley up very hot with oxyacetylene, and it's allowed to cool onto the shaft. Can be done at home, but if I'm honest, I think you need quite a bit of expertise and certainly a bit of practice. The job does get easier. The first time you do one, it can be a little bit intimidating, and as I say, personally, I'm not sure it's a DIY type of job. Gosh, so Andy's made that look incredibly easy. That's taking him no more than about 10 minutes to take off, but we probably do about 8 or 9, even 10 of these a week, so 2 a day quite often, in fact. So Andy's got that off in absolutely no time, so let's get the new one on. So Andy is now heating up the pulley, and I know sometimes this is seen as a bit of a controversial way to fit these supercharger pulleys. Let me tell you, I've been doing them this way for 22 years now. It's the way that we always do them. It's the quickest and easiest way is to heat the pulley up, allow it to expand and let it cool and shrink onto the shaft. We have fitted thousands and thousands in this way, and it is absolutely the best way to do it. So I'm going to step out of the way because things are about to get a little bit hot. We'll get this nice and warm and we'll get it fitted.
And then
that's it, supercharger pulley fitted. Nice straightforward job, nice and easy to do once you've done a couple. Andy will get this built up now. Matt is going to load on some new software too, so we do adjust the software file for the smaller supercharger pulley. So we'll get the new software loaded, get the rest of the car built up. So whilst Andy carries on and just fits the car up ready for testing, I just wanted to give you a little brief background into Paramount and particularly the upper supercharger pulleys. So Paramount Performance was actually established in 1986, and by the mid-90s it was fitting supercharger pulleys. Now these were lower crank pulleys being fitted to the straight 6 supercharged engine that was introduced on the Jaguar XF, and quite quickly after that the V8 4-litre came out. Now the problem with the 4-litre engine is the crank pulley and the supercharger part of the crank pulley is one lump of metal, so it was particularly difficult to change the drive pulley at the front. In fact, we had to cut the pulley off, had to go to a machine shop, and it had to be tapped and balanced, and you ended up taking about 3 days to change a supercharger pulley. So it was how it was done in those days, and it was a bit of a pain. But as around 2002, a good friend of mine called Fleming, and Fleming, if you're out there, I will never forget this, and I do thank you for it every day, and it's about time we went for a beer. Fleming, who ran an engineer's shop, said he believed there was enough gap between the upper supercharger pulley and the nose cone of the supercharger to actually make the pulley smaller, but we'd never done it. So Fleming, who lived in Holland, came over to see me. We pulled off a upper supercharger pulley, the first I know, certainly the first that I'd ever removed. We took a lot of measurements, and about 2 weeks later, Fleming presented me with a 4-litre upper supercharger pulley, which is exactly what this is. The 4-litre is slightly different, the nose is a bit different, but the principle between this and the 5-litre that Andy's fitting today is exactly the same. So we had the first trial part, we bolted it on, and the power gains were absolutely fantastic. And that's really what we've been doing ever since. So we have modified the pulleys for the V6s and the V8s, and the 4.2s and the 4 litres are still the same. And these have been incredibly popular for the last 22 odd years. What was interesting, in about 2008, when the 5-litre engine came out, I was driving to work one day and I thought, how can we push this absolutely to the next level? And for the first time ever anywhere that I know of, a company actually, added an upper supercharger pulley and a larger crank pulley at the same time. And that's what we're going to be featuring in our next video. So as quick as that, the car is now built back up. So you can see with a bit of practice, this job can actually get quite quick. So Andy's finished off here. Matt's going to load up the new software and let's run her on the dyno, and I'm quite keen to see what she runs. Okay, so that's the dyno run finished, and we've got the new power figures here, and they're looking pretty good. In fact, exactly what I was expecting, even a little bit higher in fact. So brake horsepower now, as you can see, is 632. So let's just be clear, this car started with this journey with us at 520. We've already added over 100 brake horsepower just from doing the remap, the pulley, and the 200 cell cats. And actually on this graph here, you're going to see the original runs that we've been doing. So the first power run was down here. Then we've got the power run with the performance tune, which runs across here. So nice improvement we saw from the performance tune, but adding the pulley is taking us to new heights. And it's huge torque too. So torque is 644, that's pounds-feet, and I think that works out to around 873 Newton meters of torque. So loads more torque. In fact, you can see the difference between the torque here is absolutely huge. This car is going to drive completely differently, and the brake horsepower has been going up very nicely with each of the modifications. So that starts to finish of stage 1 and stage 2 tuning. I hope you found that very interesting. Next, we're going to be moving into big power as we move on to lower crank and supercharger cooling modifications. So as always, we've got lots more planned for our XF here, lots more power upgrades coming soon. In the meantime, keep tuned. As you know, you can find us on the Mod Squad on Facebook. That's our own group. Please do send us any questions there, and particularly any questions you're looking at for cooling or further upgrades, because we'll try and build those into our next videos. If you need us in the meantime, you can find us at info@viezu.com or give us a call anytime. We'd love to hear from you.